Welcome to my channel, Tales with Wisdom.
Welcome to today's explainer. We're looking at the Stonecutter's secret. The masterpiece was never the stone. So months had turned into years, and Ethan's life had completely changed. And you know, it wasn't because he'd finally discovered some hidden magical shortcut to greatness. Actually, it was because he had finally definitively stopped looking for one. He'd accepted a profound truth about work and legacy. All that restless energy of his youth, that desperate hunger for immediate recognition, it had all faded away, replaced by something much deeper and honestly much more enduring. The core of his new reality was beautifully simple, summed up in this quote: "Extraordinary lives are built through ordinary days repeated with purpose. They aren't born in a flash of lightning." Every single morning, way before the first light broke, before the town even started to stir, Ethan was at the workshop. He'd stand in front of that cold, unyielding stone, lift his hammer, and strike. One strike, then another, and another. He found this quiet, rhythmic peace in the freezing air, discovering a secret that, frankly, eludes so many of us in our frantic modern lives. This transformation was incredibly slow. After 1 month, the anxiety of rushing had finally left him. By 6 months, the rhythm of the hammer was just second nature. And over the years, the sheer accumulation of that effort completely rebuilt his reality. Now, were there exciting days? Oh, absolutely. A sudden breakthrough, a perfectly carved line. But then, the rhythm broke. A bitterly cold winter morning arrived, the air sharp and biting. Ethan walked into the workshop totally expecting the familiar presence of the old master, but he didn't come. His heavy, worn tools were sitting exactly where he'd laid them the night before. His wooden chair sat utterly empty. Ethan waited for hours, just watching the winter light crawl across that dusty floor, but the old man never arrived. The silence in the workshop that day was just incredibly heavy. It carried this quiet, inevitable sorrow. Later that evening, a messenger arrived with the news. The old stonecutter had passed away peacefully in his sleep, and the days that followed brought a staggering sight. The entire village gathered for his funeral. But it wasn't just locals. People traveled from distant towns, braving terrible winter roads just to pay their respects. We're talking master builders, celebrated artists, humble teachers, entirely ordinary people. People from vastly different walks of life. Yet, as they stood together in the bitter cold, every single one of them told the exact same story. And they all shared this exact sentiment. He changed my life. Not with money, not with fame, but with wisdom. The old master hadn't offered them wealth or status. He'd gifted them wisdom. Standing there silently by the old man's grave, a heartbreaking realization completely washed over Ethan. For years, he thought he was just an apprentice learning the physical mechanics of carving stone. But he was wrong. The stone was just the medium. The old man had been using that hammer and chisel to teach him how to carve a deeply meaningful life. A few days after the funeral, Ethan went back to the workshop alone. Without the old man, the space felt impossibly vast and quiet. That familiar, comforting sound of the master's hammer was just gone forever. As golden sunlight streamed through the high windows, lighting up the floating dust, Ethan slowly started cleaning. And that's when he noticed it, tucked away in the shadows beneath the heavy workbench. An old, worn wooden box hidden away from the world. Inside that box was a single folded letter. On the front, written in the old man's unmistakable, trembling handwriting, were just 5 words for the one who stayed. With hands shaking uncontrollably, Ethan carefully unfolded the parchment. The letter began with a profound acknowledgement. The master wrote, "If you're reading this, it means you didn't quit. Most people who walked into this workshop wanted quick success. They admired the finished statues, but they hated the daily work. That's why they left. You stayed." What followed was the master's ultimate confession. He wrote, "People think I built temples from stone. That was the grand illusion, right? The physical legacy the world applauded." But the letter went on, "They're wrong. The real temple was built inside every person who learned patience, discipline, and consistency. Stone eventually breaks, buildings eventually fall, but strong character can inspire generations." The old man was never a builder of monuments. He was a builder of men. Ethan folded the letter and pulled it tight against his chest. The tears finally fell, cutting right through the stone dust on his face. In the absolute, heavy silence of that empty workshop, clarity finally arrived. He truly understood the old man's greatest work. The ultimate masterpiece was never the statues scattered across the country or the grand temples. The real masterpiece was the people. Well, time marches on, and eventually the apprentice has to take the seat of the teacher. Years passed. Ethan's hair turned gray, and he became the village's new master stonecutter. Now, he didn't take this mantle because he was the most naturally gifted artist in the land. Not at all. He became the master because he had become the most consistent. His dedication forged an unbreakable reputation. Soon enough, young people from all over the country started traveling to his workshop to learn from him, just like he once sought out the old master. And on their very first day, with all that bright-eyed eagerness of youth, they'd always ask the exact same thing. "Master, how long does it take to create a masterpiece?" Ethan would give them this knowing, gentle smile. He'd slowly pick up that same old, heavy hammer his teacher used for decades. He'd look them dead in the eye and simply say, "A lifetime." As they stood there, looking confused, he'd point his weathered hand at a massive, uncut stone and add, "It begins with one strike that seems too small to matter." Now, this is a tough philosophy for a modern mind to grasp, isn't it? One afternoon, this young boy walked into Ethan's workshop. His shoulders were slumped, his face completely painted with the deep frustration of unmet expectations. He looked up and confessed, his voice heavy with defeat, "Sir, I want to become successful, but every time I start, I lose motivation. I try, but the fire just fades." He was trapped in that painful cycle of starting and stopping, completely paralyzed by the gap between his ambition and his reality. Ethan didn't give him some complicated lecture. He just handed the boy his heavy hammer and said, "Hit the stone once." The boy took a swing. Nothing happened, the boy sighed, feeling completely validated in his frustration. "Exactly," Ethan replied. "Now hit it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that." The boy frowned. He was clearly unsatisfied with this, and he looked up at Ethan to ask the exact question that plagues all of us. "When will I finally see results?" Ethan's smile just held the warmth of 1,000 early mornings. His answer to the boy is literally the secret to all enduring success: the day you stop asking. You see, we spend so much of our energy obsessing over the finish line that we learn to resent the actual running. But as Ethan explained, the moment you let go of the desperate need for an immediate outcome, the moment you truly fall in love with the daily, ordinary process, that is exactly when results quietly begin falling in love with you. And the proof of this secret really stands the test of time. As the years went by, the unfinished temple that the old master and Ethan had poured their lives into was finally completed. And it was a marvel. People traveled from all over the world just to stand in its shadow and admire its staggering beauty. They took countless photos, praised the intricate architecture, the sweeping columns. They looked at this finished structure and called it an absolute global miracle. But the real truth behind its creation, it wasn't a miracle at all. That temple wasn't built in one brilliant, inspired day. It wasn't born from a sudden burst of magical genius. No, it was built by thousands of ordinary, quiet mornings. Thousands of unseen, uncelebrated hammer strikes. It was the physical manifestation of thousands of isolated moments where someone woke up in the cold and chose discipline over their excuses. So let's bring this powerful metaphor out of the workshop and directly into your life, because your life is absolutely no different. Every time you push through a brutal workout, every single page you force yourself to read to expand your mind, every dollar you consciously choose to save instead of spend, every promise you honor, every kind word you speak when you'd rather be sharp, every difficult, disciplined choice you make, these are your daily hammer strikes against the stone. On their own, in total isolation, any single one of those actions seems completely insignificant, right? If you read one page, you aren't transformed. You save $1, you aren't rich. But over time, the compounding weight of these tiny actions dictates your reality. They shape the very fabric of who you become. Nature proves this to us constantly. Massive, ancient mountains are worn down to dust by tiny, persistent drops of water. Sprawling, majestic forests grow from the most microscopic, fragile seeds. You can never underestimate the staggering power of a small action repeated every single day, because the ultimate truth comes down to this: extraordinary people are created by ordinary habits practiced consistently. Greatness is never a giant cinematic moment that just suddenly happens to you out of nowhere. It is merely the quiet, unglamorous accumulation of ordinary habits, stacked one on top of the other, day after day, year after year. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with one pivotal question to really let sink in. What is the one small action you can repeat every single day, starting today. Stop standing at the base of the mountain, paralyzing yourself by staring at the peak. Stop trying to carve the entire statue in one afternoon. Focus only on the next strike. Pick up the hammer. Because one day, years from now, you'll look back at the life you've created, and in that quiet moment of reflection, you will realize the absolute deepest truth of all. You weren't just building success. You were building yourself. If the wisdom of the stonecutter resonated with you today, be sure to subscribe to Tales with Wisdom. And remember, great lives are never built in one giant moment. They are built one small strike at a time. Keep striking.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.